Total expenditure method. Yes, total expenditure method is yet another simple method designed by Professor Alfred Marshall. In this method, we first calculate total expenditure. So, how do you calculate total expenditure? Very simple. Total expenditure is price into quantity. I'll give you an example. I went to a grocery shop and I demanded 3 packets of biscuits costing 5 rupees per packet. So what is my total expenditure there? Yes, it is price into quantity. Price is 5 rupees per packet and quantity is 3 packets, and hence total expenditure will be 15 rupees. So how do you calculate total expenditure? Very simple, price into quantity. Now, according to Professor Marshall, now this total expenditure is the basis of deciding whether it's a elastic demand or inelastic demand or unitary elastic demand. Very simple. There are 3 categories where we see that due to change in prices and change in demand, the total expenditure changes, and how elasticity of demand get affected due to that is being seen. Now, I'll explain the whole concept theoretically first, and then I'll go with an example. When due to change in prices, there is an increase in total expenditure, then we say the elasticity of demand is greater than 1, which means the demand is relatively elastic. If I put this analogy into the next level, due to change in prices and demand, the total expenditure remains same. That is, though there is no change in earlier expenditure and new expenditure. What do I understand? That elasticity of demand remains 1, and that is the demand is unitary elastic. I go to the third case where due to change in prices and demand, total expenditure also changes, and now it goes lesser than the earlier expenditure. In this case, elasticity of demand will be less than 1. In technical term, we say the demand is relatively inelastic. I would give you a simple example. This chart gives you a complete idea how do we go ahead with total expenditure and try to analyze the elasticity of demand from it. In the left hand side, there is a commodity. Then another column, it talks about the price of the commodity. Third talks about the quantity demanded. Fourth talks about total expenditure. And lastly, what we try to put up is analysis or findings of this calculation. So let's say for a commodity A, price is 10 rupees per kg and quantity demanded is 6 kgs. So total expenditure will be 60 rupees. If the price goes from 10 to 20 and quantity changes from 6 to 5, then the total expenditure will be, yes, it's 20 into 5, 100. Earlier it was 60, now it is 100. What do you see? The total expenditure has increased, so elasticity of demand is greater than 1, which means in this case, the demand is relatively elastic. For the second product, what happens? Let's say product B. The price is 30 rupees per kg and you buy 4 kgs. So total expenditure in this case will be 120 rupees. If price happens to change from 30 to 40 rupees per kg, my quantity demanded changes from 4 to 3, so my total expenditure becomes 120 again. Earlier expenditure 120, new expenditure is 120. So what do I understand? My total expenditure remains same, so it's a unitary elastic situation. Elasticity of demand is 1. In the next case, let's say for product C, what happens? The price of product C is 50 rupees per kg when 2 kgs are demanded. So my total expenditure will be 15 to 200 rupees. If the price of the product C has changed from 50 to 60, my quantity demand reduces from 2 to 1. So my total expenditure becomes 60. Earlier it was 100, now it is 60. My total expenditure has reduced. When the total expenditure is reduced, we say elasticity of demand is less than 1, which means it is relatively inelastic in nature. So this graph tells me that total expenditure method is very simple to understand. That when the total expenditure is increasing, then the demand is relatively elastic. When it is same, the demand is unitary. And when it is less than the original expenditure, then the demand is relatively inelastic.